When we take a look at verbal communication and how language changes or comes together, there are two areas to look at: the convergence and divergence. And convergence is the tendency for people who like each other and spend time together to slowly adapt similar speaking styles. Now, this can be done deliberately. It's actually a theory that when you go and talk to someone, you somewhat deliberately and maybe even subconsciously try to sound like them because that is more likely to gain you acceptance and appreciation with them. And so it definitely can be done deliberately, but a lot of it is done subconsciously. We don't realize we're even doing it. In fact, this is how slang spreads throughout our language, is that we start hearing something and it converges. It actually happened to me in the early aughts, sometime around 2005. A phrase got really popular: my bad. I hate that phrase. Okay? It doesn't even grammatically make sense. Bad is an adjective. How can it be yours? As soon as I heard this phrase, I hated it and I was determined to not say it or use it. The thing is, I was surrounded by people going, my bad, 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 my bad. And so, of course, after months of this, I open a door and accidentally hit someone with it. And of course, I immediately go, my bad. And I immediately felt horrible with myself because I couldn't believe I used this phrase that I didn't want to use. And this is really how all slang spreads. It spreads through convergence. It's the reason why when someone older tries to use slang to fit in with the young crowd, it sounds horrible. Slang needs to come naturally. It needs to come through natural convergence. And it really can't be faked. And because this is a natural thing that happens with languages and brings them together. Now, the opposite effect also happens. We have divergence that takes place. And this is the tendency that separated groups or groups who really dislike each other will speak differently and use different phrases. You can actually see this happening in our own country with political divides, where certain phrases end up being used and often have different meanings. One that's come up is the idea of defund the police, which in one group of people means allocating some of the funds that are currently going to police departments and using them to instead fund social programs and social workers so that they can actually respond to things that currently the police respond to. And then in other groups, it means you're just going to get rid of the police. And it means different things. And some of this is because they literally dislike each other and they're almost deliberately trying to frame it this way. But once again, most of the time, this is just a natural thing that happens when two groups are separated. Divergence is way, way, way more common from an unconscious level and how changes occur. In fact, that's how accents happen. Okay, the simple fact is that not it used to be everyone spoke the same kind of English. All right, if you went to Australia, then everyone was like, "Good day. It's jolly good to see you," because the people from Australia were actually just English people who had committed a crime and were shipped over there. But after being separated from England for a while, they start developing their own way of talking, saying things like "Good day, mate. What's up?" Um, and they actually wouldn't even say "What's up." And the same thing was here in the United States. We originally had a bunch of people who sounded like British people, but they were separated from England. Not only that, they were separated from each other, and they all come up with their own way of talking and their own mannerisms. And that's actually the reason why you have a bunch of accents. If you could jump into a police phone booth and travel back in time to 1700 and go to Georgia, people would probably talk like this because most of them had grown up in England. Meanwhile, if you go to rural Georgia now, how y'all want some grits right now? And that's because the group was separated. They started to come up with their own accent. Meanwhile, in Boston, you went from people sounding British to talking about being wicked smart. All right. And the thing is, because of plane travel, the internet, videos, satellite going all over the world, and especially this country, accents are actually slowly disappearing. The Southern accent has already disappeared from the city of Atlanta. There are so many transplants that a native born Atlantan will not have a Southern accent. I've personally experienced it when I went there to bury my uncle who had passed away from cancer. We were being served by this 19-year-old in a restaurant, or maybe 20. And we actually point blank asked him. We figured he was just a college student who was a transplant. And he's all, no, I grew up here in Atlanta. And that's going to happen everywhere, probably except Boston, because they're such stubborn bastards. They're going to talk that way no matter what. And this is what divergence and convergence is this way that languages both differ from each other and slowly come apart, and also the way that they will start to come together and how we spread new ideas and new types of language.